All right, I returned. Sorry about that. This is how recordings are going to go, though. Sometimes we're going to need to do multiple parts because of the work demands call, and I'm having multiple businesses. I'll get a time from here to here, and then I need to go run off and do something. Anyway, we were talking about Vince McMahon and narcissism, and we were in the middle of discussing the nature of that he has a sense of entitlement. Certainly, if you hear the narrative, he was abused by either, I believe, his mother or mother's boyfriend as a younger person living in the Carolinas. He didn't meet his father until age 12, and then fought and scraped to get an opportunity to promote. He actually, if you do research on Vince, there is a tie-in to him having some failed promotional aspects, most notably an Evel Knievel event in the 70s before taking on, I believe it was Portland, Maine, and the surrounding area as a territory of his own, or at least a stopover of his own later, and then buying his father out in 1982. And then, I mean, if you think about it, just round off, do easy math, we're close to 40 years later, where Vince has been in charge of this multi-billion-dollar company that came from multiple bankruptcies before going national. And so, because he's going to consider himself special, to come from nothing and be able to do that on a consistent basis, because he's going to see himself that he deserves that favorable treatment and believe that whatever he wants he should get, and that he only values those who value him. I think that's another contributing factor to the potential narcissism explanation here. So another thing to consider is that the narcissistic personality archetype exploits others without guilt or shame. And so if you think about it, the entire premise that professional wrestlers are independent contractors at the level of WWE and national companies is exploitation at its finest. And I will say that when I was involved in the business, one of the big things that I hated and despised, it was to the point where I didn't run my own events because of it. I helped people to organize events and whatnot, but never ran one of my own. And a big reason for that is this misnomer that promoters have. Oh, you work in my territory, you work for me, and so you can't work for anybody else. Excuse me? That comes from Vince. That is a Vinceism that goes back to the expansion days, that even though he has no legal claim to these individuals' contracts or not, because I've spoken with multiple lawyers about this over the years, and I actually have friends that have worked and do work in WWE who have shown me bits and pieces of their contracts, and the contracts ain't worth two shakes of a lamb's tail as it relates to holding people in. What happens, though, is the imposed threat of blackballing and or leading to not being able to make a living with their dream job is enough to keep people, men and women, subservient to a man who could care less what happens to them. We can also see a history with Vince of bringing people back that he has demeaned over the years and to exploit them for money. To be very honest, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer said, this whole pandemic has completely and totally exposed there are good people in the world and there are some really, really bad people. And I don't care who judges me for this. I would consider Vince McMahon to be one of the worst people on the planet when it comes to exploitation of human beings under the guise of being gregarious and megalomaniacal and all of these other things. What he has done in the cases of, for example, the Hart family. Tell me there's a reason that when Owen Hart died, he couldn't have set Martha and the children up for the rest of their lives. Now, if he's done so behind the scenes and we don't know it, then good for him, and I will sit corrected. But the fact of the matter is, if he had done so, I don't think that they would have needed to go to the length of the lawsuit that they did. Another example, and it's not a shot at Vicky Guerrero. Vicky Guerrero was very good and captivating and compelling when she was on top. television. However, she had small children to care for after her husband died in 2005. And yet she came on the road for a talent contract? You're telling me that a multi-billionaire couldn't have written her a check that would have kept her and her children good for the rest of her life? And don't give me the excuse that, oh, well, no one deserves a handout. Well, what did it do to those small children? Or even if it didn't do anything, what could it have done to those small children that they'd lost their father and now their mother was on the road? And there's countless of other examples of Vince manipulating and using people without Vince's a nearly 40-year career of being on top as the lead promoter in the industry. Frequently demeans, intimidates, bullies, or belittles others. I mean, the stories of it, if we look at AEW and the Mr. Brody character right now, that is Vincent McMahon satire at its finest. You can't eat before me, or if you snooze, you'll get fired. I mean, it was said to me, and I know that I'm a polarizing figure, and lots of people don't know who I am, so they can care less, but suffice to say, there are those in the wrestling industry that consider me to be a polarizing figure, partially because to be the first person to consistently do play-by-play from a wheelchair in the history of the sport and have a permanent disability made me unique and different. I would often point out some of the fallacies in the business, and it didn't make me very popular. Anyway, there was a point when I wanted to make it on a national level, and part of me still does for a completely different reason. I would love to make it on a national level in order to be an advocate for professional wrestling, but also to be able to go around and talk to kids and people that are at risk and people in hospitals about what it is to become a character and fight and do really cool things. Obviously, this may never happen for me, and I'm okay with that, just saying what's there. And I'm reminded of a conversation I had with somebody who I won't name because they asked me never to go public with this information. But I had a conversation with somebody who had worked for Vince McMahon in 2007 or 8, I don't remember which, but it was either 2007, 2008, it's a while ago. And he looked me in the eye and he said, "Kid, you're talented enough to go to work for any national company that's out there, but the fact you're in a wheelchair and you're not photogenic, you won't get hired. Vince won't hire you." And when somebody says that to you and they say it with the conviction of, I like cheese, you look at that and you go, it's there. And then when you look at from a disabled person's level, you look at Zach Gowen in 2003-4, and how that whole character was bent around the Mr. McMahon character demeaning him because of his disability. I'm sorry, how much of who Vince really is, even if it's 0.1%, would have done the same thing and demeaned the young man over it. We don't know. We really don't know. The fact of the matter is, it was Vince McMahon who signed off on Brock Lesnar throwing a physically disabled person down a flight of stairs, even if there was camera tricks there. I mean, it's just certain things you don't do. And so the demeaning of others and the bullying of others for one's own amusement is hugely narcissistic and hugely a Vince McMahon trait. And so what do the talent, what do the people that are working for Vince need to do now? First of all, they need to understand that they will never matter as much as Vince does in his own mind. Each and every one of them is expendable. And I think deep down, most of the talent that works there knows this. I think they understand it. I think they're so desperate to live their dream in a lot of cases, or they've become accustomed to a lifestyle that they just take the abuse. But now, I mean, and to be fair, for those who didn't hear the Pat Millity's program we did yesterday on my main channel, on my coaching channel, might be worth going to check out. Golden Opportunities Coaching, if you're interested. Fascinating conversation. But one of the things is, if this virus is as bad as they say it is, lots of people have died. Many more could die. And to put oneself at risk, there are people in WWE with family members that live with them that are elderly, they're sickly, there are WWE stars with children that have autism and other autoimmune diseases, and yet these people are being coerced, at the very least, subliminally advertised at the minimum here to get back to work. So they have to know when you work for somebody who doesn't care and who isn't going to meet your needs except when they absolutely have to, there's no reason to believe that's going to change. All one needs to do to really look at this is to look at the way he treats others, others that have ticked him off. You can be his best friend 1 minute, but if you do something that's fine, pal, you don't need to be doing that, right? And then all of a sudden he'll turn on you. Look at the number of talents. Ricochet, Cedric Alexander, who else has he? Rusev, just individuals that he's promised to push, get really hot on, and then cooled off on super quickly. And again, to me, that's a sign of a narcissism in that I can treat you like a toy. I can take you down off the shelf. I can bring it to you. I can promise you, and I'll put you back on the shelf, and I'll take you down like you like it. Take off your glasses, folks. He's not P.T. Barnum of this age, the world's greatest promoter who happens to have some quirks. No, this is a dark, careless, often heartless man. And that doesn't mean he hasn't done good things. I remember before the late Paul Bearer passed away, I had been corresponding with Paul for some years, and I remember having many conversations with Paul, at least probably 3 or 4 conversations anyway, that Vince McMahon saved his life by paying for his gastric bypass surgery at the time he had it in the late 2000s. And without that, he'd probably be dead. And so I said to him at the time, as a person who studied human behavior for the last 20 plus years, I don't like the guy. And I'll get to why I still watch the product in a minute, because that's probably on the mind of many people who would say, if you're going to this level of depth, why do you still watch it? But anyway, I remember saying to Bill, a.k.a. Paul Bearer, I said, well, does that mean you go back? And he said to me, and I'll never forget it, he goes, for what that man is and how he can turn a room around, I'd go back a million times, excuse me. If he let me, and here's a guy who almost lost his wife, chasing being on the road for that company. It's pretty sad, So I think it's time for talents to take off the glasses. I don't want to put this on Tony Khan, but I would say this. I believe Tony Khan, in what I've seen of him in media interviews, not only for his wrestling organization, but for his football organization and for other ventures, I believe that he is the type of man that if a WWE talent came to him and said, I was fired because I went against the advice of the coronavirus, I think he's the type of guy that would slip them some money and just keep them on the shelf and say, we can't use you if here's some money, or maybe you want to get into another industry. There's a startup. I believe Tony Khan at his core is a good person. I do not believe the same with this man and never have. I think it's important for talent also to remember why they get into the business to begin with. I don't think most of them got in because of Vince at any level, or the WWE/WWF for earlier level fans. I think they got in because they wanted to be entertainers. I think they got in because many of them wanted to be wrestlers, even though they're not allowed to say the word wrestling on TV anymore. In any event, I think there's something to the talents and establishing their dreams and aspirations. And if I go on the road for the sake of this company, and I'm putting my kids at risk and I'm putting myself at risk and all of that, I think you need to make a plan. Like if I needed to, and I would encourage any talent in any company nationally to do this, but if I needed to protect myself from this virus, what would I do to get back on my feet once everything levels off? I think one of the things that's happened, and just as an aside, I do believe that multiple governments are behind this virus. I don't buy it came from bats in the middle of the desert story or whatever the traditional narrative is. I believe governments knew once you can't use in advance that something like this is going to happen. I think there's proof out there if one wants to search for it. But that not being said, I think every man, woman, even camera people and support staff need to start thinking about a plan in case this goes on long term. The longer it goes on, the more likely you are to have problems with your health. And it's not worth dying over or getting really sick over to the point you can't pay your insurance bill anyway, just because, you don't want to lose your job with a world-renowned company. I think there's also an art to be said for, if you're really going to deal with a guy like Vince, a person like Vince, I think you have to learn to manipulate him yourself. I think you have to realize that when he speaks, there's a con man in there, and that the con man comes out to play. I would say be prepared for a volatile and ever-changing relationship. Vince believes that, I believe Vince to believe that he has everybody's best interest at heart. I think he honestly believes that lie about himself. But I think also, too, the people that get the furthest with him are the people that have learned to turn his own fear and neuroses against him in interview formats and things of that nature. I look at the media ban. I would love to reach out to WWE talent on all three brands right now, but I don't, because knowing full well they're not going to be allowed to speak to me anyway, because I'm not a vetted journalist from a fluffy newspaper, one of the big six in the U.S. I'm not going to be allowed to do the media, which is just sad. But, when the talents get out, I would say feel free to contact me if I'm still alive. I mean, what's the deal, folks? 2 months ago, I left the nursing facility. 6 months ago, and they're still telling me I was going to die. My point is, life's too short for this stuff. Get it done and start to really take back life, America. In any event, don't take things personally when you're dealing with an narcissist either. It's not personal. They could care less who you are. Don't buy into the version of who you are. If you're talented, I'll use the news of the revival just the other day. They were told they were too generic, and they just didn't have it, whatever it is. And if they took that to heart and they were to live that truth, they might quit the business. They might go to all Japan and never be seen again. Who knows? But they didn't. And I think everyone that's still in that cesspool of an environment needs to take stock of who they really are as an athlete, as a parent, as a spouse, as a person, as a member of a family and a global family. I think we need to take value and stock of where we are. Look, you're not going to argue with Vince and get him to see sense. So it's not like you can take a group meeting and say, "Hey, Vinny, I think we should take this disorder more seriously, or this sickness more seriously." He's going to go, "Hey, pal, you might as well grow up with and he's going to dismiss it. Know yourself and your limitations. If you're comfortable, and here's the thing too, if you honestly don't think the virus is a big enough idea to stay home, and it feels right to you to stand by Vince and go in the trenches and perform, then go do that. More power to you. I think people should have the freedom of expression to deal with how they're dealing with the pandemic. And if part of that for some people is we're gonna get steaks every Wednesday and we're gonna grill them Thursday night, whatever that looks like, let it be, because people deserve and are entitled to their autonomy. Let go of your need for approval from someone like Vince, because his approval is so circumstantial that it really has no value in the long run anyway. He's going to like you today and hate you tomorrow and discard you like a used feminine hygiene product in a moment's notice. And he has done that countless times to people. I think it's important to look for support within your community of wrestlers and talents. Learn what healthy relationships with superiors are, what they look like and feel like, especially if WWE is your first foray into entertainment. You know, talk with a pastor, talk with a minister, talk with someone you love, talk with a life coach, talk with it doesn't matter who you talk to, it just matters that you keep talking and do so on a regular basis. You know, spend time with people that see what this job might be doing with you. I think it's important for anyone to look at that and say, hey, you know, this is dangerous for you, and we don't want to see this anymore. I think it's also a good idea to foster new friendships, and to, while we can't talk contracts with other organizations, I think it'd be great for people inside WWE to call up their friends or colleagues or individuals they've always wondered about and say, hey, what's it like to work for AEW? What's it like to work for ROH? What's it like to go independent freelancer? What's that like? So that one can start making plans. I think the biggest problem, especially for whether they be musicians, wrestlers, athletes of a different sort, basketball players, baseball players, and the like, none of the sports channels are on right now, so I assume that it's not time. But in any event, you know, at some level, it's, you know, making sure that the friendships you have value, and look for meaning and purpose in other areas of life. Realize that WWE is not the be-all, end-all of your life, and that Vince McMahon, narcissistic tendency or not, does not have the solutions associated with getting you to a healthy, happy place if you're a talent that works there now. So I'll close with that, but this has been Scott Golden of Pro Wrestling Logic. Keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.